The treatments arrived hidden in a crate of cleaning supplies. Danny had been clever. No one checked what the servants received. It was beneath the Drake and I to care about such things. Megan held the small vials in her hands. They did not look special, just clear liquid in simple containers. But they represented hope. Real hope for the first time in Kithros' life. She explained everything to the prince. She showed him the research files. She told him about the treatments and what they might do. She also told him the truth about the risks. It might not work, she said honestly. Human medicine has never been tested on Drakenai before. There could be side effects we cannot predict. Kithros looked at the vials for a long time. His small hands were shaking slightly. What do you think I should do? He asked. Megan shook her head. This is not my choice to make. It is your body, your life. You have to decide. The prince was quiet. Then he looked up at her with determination in his fire-colored eyes. I want to try, he said. I want to know what it feels like to walk. Even if it is just once. Even if it does not work. I want to try. Megan nodded. She felt proud of him. This small child had more courage than many adults she had known. The treatments began that night. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Days passed, then weeks. Kithros received small injections every few days, always in secret, always at night. Megan monitored him carefully, watching for any bad reactions. But then, something wonderful started to happen. One morning, Kithros called Megan over with excitement in his voice. Look, he said. He pointed at his feet. Look, his toes were moving. Just slightly, just a tiny wiggle. But they were moving. Megan felt tears jump into her eyes. She knelt beside him and took his small clawed hand in hers. You are doing it, she whispered. Kithros, you are doing it. The prince laughed. It was the first time she had ever heard him laugh. The sound was rough and unused, like a door that had been closed for too long. But it was beautiful. Over the following months, the progress continued. Feeling returned to his legs. His muscles, which had been weak and useless, began to grow stronger. His wings, though still fragile, could now flutter on their own. Megan worked with him every day. She helped him exercise his legs. She held him up while he tried to stand. He fell many times. He got frustrated. Sometimes he cried from exhaustion and pain, but he never gave up. And Megan never let go. She also kept teaching him about human things. She taught him how to play chess, a game from ancient Earth. At first, he did not understand why anyone would enjoy moving little pieces on a board. But then he started to see the strategy, the planning, the thinking ahead. This is like war, he said with surprise. But without blood. Yes, Megan smiled. Humans learned long ago that it is better to fight with minds than with weapons. Kithros became obsessed with the game. He studied it constantly. Within a month, he was beating Megan every time they played. Within 2 months, he was creating strategies she had never seen before. He was brilliant. His mind was sharp and quick. The Drakenai had thrown him away because his body was broken. But his mind was extraordinary. Megan felt sad and angry about all the years he had lost. All the things he could have learned. All the things he could have done. Instead, he had been locked in a dark room and forgotten. But she did not let herself stay angry for long. There was too much work to do. One evening, Kithros managed to stand on his own for the first time. His legs shook badly. His face twisted with effort. But he stood there, holding on to nothing, for almost 10 seconds before he fell. Megan caught him before he hit the ground. She was laughing and crying at the same time. I did it, Kithros breathed. His eyes were shining with joy. Megan, I did it. You did, she said, hugging him gently. I knew you could. But their happiness would not last. They had been too careless. One night, Megan took Kithros out to the gardens. She had been doing this for weeks now, helping him practice walking in secret. The gardens were quiet at night, and the guards rarely came there. But on this night, a guard did come. He saw them before Megan could hide. He saw the prince, standing on his own 2 feet, walking slowly with Megan's help. The guard's eyes went wide with shock. Then his face hardened with suspicion that within minutes, Megan was surrounded by soldiers. They grabbed her roughly and put chains on her wrists. Kithros screamed at them to stop, but they ignored him. Megan was dragged through the palace to the throne room. The great doors opened, and she was thrown onto the cold stone floor. King Varathan sat on his throne like a mountain of darkness. He was huge, far bigger than any Draconite Megan had ever seen. His scales were black as the space between stars. His eyes burned with cold fire that seemed to see right through her. "You," he said. His voice was deep and terrible. "What have you done to my son?" Megan lifted her head. Her heart was pounding with fear, but she would not show it. She would not give him that satisfaction. "I helped him," she said clearly. "I did what no one else would do. I cared for him." The king's eyes narrowed. Smoke curled from his nostrils. "You use human medicine on a royal prince," he growled. "You broke our laws. You could have killed him." "But I did not," Megan replied. "I saved him." The king rose from his throne. He was so large that he blocked out the light. He took a step toward Megan, and she felt the floor shake beneath his weight. "You dare speak to me this way?" His voice was like thunder. "You are nothing. A servant. A human. You are less than the dirt beneath my claws." Megan looked up at him. She should have been terrified. She should have begged for her life. But instead, she felt a strange calm come over her. "Maybe I am nothing to you," she said, "but I am something to your son. I am the only one who ever treated him like he mattered." The king's eyes widened with rage. He raised his clawed hand, ready to strike her down. But before he could, a voice echoed through the throne room. "Father, stop." Everyone turned to look. And there, walking through the great doors on his own 2 feet, was Prince Kithros. 5 years passed like water flowing down a river. So much changed that Megan sometimes could not believe it was the same galaxy she lived in. King Varathan kept his word. He gave Megan a new position in the palace. She was no longer a servant. She was the official guardian of Prince Kithros, recognized as a member of the royal household. It was something that had never happened before in the history of the Draconite Empire. Many nobles protested. They said it was disgraceful. They said it was an insult to their traditions. But the king silenced them with a single look. His word was law, and no one dared to challenge him. Human medical teams were quietly invited to the Draconite homeworld. They continued Kithros' treatment and studied how human medicine could help other species. Some Draconite were angry about this. Others were curious. And a few began to question their old ways. Why did they kill children who were born different? Why did they look down on humans so much? Perhaps these primitive creatures had something valuable to offer. After all, dot change came slowly, but it came. Laws were passed that protected human workers from the worst abuses. Schools were opened where Draconite and humans could learn together. Trade agreements were signed that were fairer to both sides. Megan became a bridge between the two species. She spoke up for human rights at council meetings. She helped translate when misunderstandings arose. She showed the Draconite that humans were not just useful for cleaning and carrying. They were smart and creative and brave in their own ways. Not everyone accepted these changes. Some nobles still looked at Megan with hatred in their eyes. Some still believed that humans were inferior creatures who should know their place. But they were becoming fewer every year. Kithros grew strong. His legs became solid and sure. He could run and jump and climb. His wings grew powerful enough to carry him short distances. He was not like other Draconai, but he was himself, and that was enough. He studied constantly. He learned about law and history and science. He learned about human culture and Draconai traditions. He spent hours talking with Megan, asking her questions about Earth and humans and the galaxy. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot those dark years alone in the tower. And he never forgot who had saved him. Then, one quiet morning, King Vorathine passed away in his sleep. He was ancient beyond measure, and his body had simply grown tired. The doctor said he could have lived longer if he had wanted to. But perhaps he had decided that his work was done. His empire was in good hands. His son was ready. Megan was with Kithros when he heard the news. She held his hand while he cried for the father he had hated and loved and finally come to understand. The coronation was held 1 month later. Draconai from all 12 star systems came to watch. Ambassadors from 100 different species filled the great hall. And standing in a place of honor, right beside the throne, was Megan Cole. Kithros stood before his people. He was no longer a small, broken child. He was tall and strong, his golden scales shining like the sun. His wings spread wide behind him, and his fire-colored eyes burned with purpose. The crown was placed upon his head. The ancient words were spoken. And just like that, he became King Kithros, ruler of the Draconai Empire. His first act as king was to officially end the practice of indentured servitude for humans. No more would humans be taken from their homes and forced to work. Those who were already servants were given a choice. They could stay and work as paid employees, or they could return to their homeworlds with money for their journey. His second act was to create a joint medical program between humans and Draconai. Knowledge would be shared freely. Diseases would be studied together. Both species would help each other become healthier and stronger. His third act was to name Megan Cole as his royal advisor. It was the first time a human had ever held such a position in any major alien empire. The galaxy watched in amazement. Some cheered. Some protested. But no one could deny that something extraordinary was happening. At the celebration after the coronation, a young Draconai noble approached Megan. He had green scales and cold eyes, and his mouth was twisted in a sneer. "How does it feel?" he said loudly, making sure others could hear. "To have risen so far above your station? You are still just a human, a servant who got lucky. Do not forget where you came from." Megan looked at him calmly. She had faced worse than arrogant nobles over the past 5 years. "I have not forgotten where I came from," she said. "I came from a small colony world where my family did not have much. I came from a place where people helped each other because that was how we survived. I came from a species that does not give up, even when everything seems impossible." She stepped closer to the noble, and he actually stepped back. "I did not teach Kithros how to walk," she continued. "His own strength did that. I just carried him until he was ready to walk himself. That is what humans do. We carry each other through the hard times. We lift each other up when we fall. We never leave anyone behind." She smiled slightly. "Maybe that is why we have survived so long. Not because we are the strongest or the fastest or the most powerful, but because we refuse to abandon each other. We keep caring, even when it is hard, even when it hurts, even when everyone tells us it is pointless." She looked around the room at all the watching faces. Human and Draconai and many other species. You can call that weakness if you want, but I think it is the greatest strength anyone can have. The noble had no response. He simply turned and walked away, his face red with embarrassment. Across the room, King Kithros caught Megan's eye. He smiled at her, that warm smile that she had first seen on a dark balcony so many years ago. She smiled back. The Draconai had thought humans were beneath them. small and soft and worthless. They had believed that kindness was weakness and compassion was foolish. They were wrong, because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can carry the weight of empires. Sometimes the people you look down on are the ones who will lift you up. And sometimes a single human woman carrying a broken child can change the course of history. Megan Cole had arrived at the palace as a servant. She had been nothing in the eyes of the mighty Drakenai, but she had carried a prince. She had healed a king, and she had helped birth a new era for the entire galaxy. Not through strength, not through power, not through fire or claws or wings, through something far more powerful. Through love. And that was the most human thing of all. Katie Monroe had been cleaning floors in the Volcari Imperial Palace for 3 months when she learned the one rule that everyone followed. Never go near the East Wing. Never look in that direction. Never even think about it. She was just one of 12 humans who worked as servants in the palace. Humans were the only species in the whole galaxy who would take such jobs. The pay was terrible. The work was hard. But humans needed the money. Earth was still poor and weak compared to other planets. They had only discovered alien life 50 years ago. They were still trying to catch up. So Katie scrubbed. She cleaned windows made of crystal that cost more than her parents' house back on Earth. She polished floors that stretched longer than football fields. She washed dishes that had been used by creatures who thought of her as nothing more than a tool with hands. Her boss was a Volcari named Overseer Thrall. The Volcari were tall beings with silver skin and 4 eyes. They stood about 8 feet high and looked down at everyone else, both in height and in attitude. Thrall made it very clear from the first day that humans were not welcome here. They were allowed. They were useful. But they were not welcome. You will clean where I tell you to clean, Thrall had said during her first week. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not look at the nobles. You will not exist unless you are needed. Do you understand this, human? Katie had understood. She had nodded and kept her eyes on the ground and said nothing. That was how you survived in this place. You became invisible. You became furniture that could move. But there was one more rule that Thrall made very clear. The East Wing is forbidden to all servants, he had told her, his 4 eyes narrowing with something like fear. Prince Calvern lives there. His companion lives there. You will not go near it. You will not look at it. If you break this rule, I cannot protect you. No one can protect you. Katie had wanted to ask what kind of companion was so dangerous that even the Overseer seemed scared. But she kept her mouth shut and nodded like she always did. Later, in the servant quarters, she learned the truth from the other workers. The prince had a Drek. A Drek was a creature from old Valkyrie stories. It was like a dragon from Earth legends, but real. Most people thought Dreks had died out hundreds of years ago. No one had seen a living Drek in 3 centuries. But somehow, Prince Calvern had found one. He had brought it to the palace. He kept it in the East Wing gardens. The other servants whispered about it late at night. It killed 14 people, said one of the Chirac workers, a being that looked like a giant insect. 14 servants who got too close. It burned them to ash. It can smell fear, added Anolith, an amphibian creature with blue-green skin. It knows when you are scared, and it likes fear. It hunts it. It breathes fire hot enough to melt metal, someone else said. The prince can barely control it. One day, it will break free and kill us all. Katie listened to these stories, but did not believe all of them. She had grown up on Earth reading about dragons and monsters. She knew how stories grew bigger with each telling. The Drek was probably dangerous, yes. But 14 kills? Fire that melted metal? That sounded like exaggeration. Still, she did not test her theory. She stayed away from the East Wing. She cleaned her assigned areas. She kept her head down. 3 months passed this way. 3 months of scrubbing and cleaning and being invisible. 3 months of saving her small wages to send back to her family on Earth. 3 months of being treated like she was less than nothing. Then came the night of the Emperor's celebration. The Emperor Velthorn was turning 300 years old. The Velkari lived much longer than humans, and 300 was considered a great age even for them. Noble families from across the galaxy had come to celebrate. The palace was packed with thousands of guests. Every servant was working triple shifts just to keep up with the demands. Katie had been assigned to the overflow guest quarters on the 4th floor. It was far from the main celebration, far from the important guests. She was changing bedsheets when the alarm started screaming. The announcement came in rapid Velkari, spoken too fast for her translator to catch everything. But she understood the important words. Gas leak. Toxic. E-sections. Evacuate now. Katie dropped the sheets and ran for the door. The hallway was already filling with panicked guests. The Velkari were tall and strong, and they pushed through the corridors without caring about anyone smaller. Katie was shoved against walls. She was knocked to the ground twice. She lost sight of the other human servants. The evacuation routes were designed for Velkari bodies, not human ones. The emergency doors were too high. The handles were in the wrong places. Katie struggled to keep up as the crowd pushed her forward. Then someone knocked her through a side door. She fell through it and landed hard on soft ground. The door clicked shut behind her. The sounds of panic became muffled and distant. Katie looked up and felt her heart stop. She was in a garden, but not any garden. This was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. Plants glowed with soft blue light. A stream of orange liquid flowed between silver rocks. The trees looked like they had been grown into shapes rather than cut. Everything was peaceful and quiet and absolutely forbidden. This was the East Wing. This was where the Drek lived. Katie tried to stand, but her legs would not work. Her whole body had gone cold with fear. She needed to find the door. She needed to get out. She needed to run before the creature found her. Then she saw it. The Drek was lying beside a pool of still water at the center of the garden. It was curled up like a sleeping cat, but it was bigger than any animal Katie had ever seen. Maybe 15 feet long from its nose to the tip of its tail. Its scales were dark purple and black, shifting colors as light touched them. It had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows of 3. All 6 eyes were closed. Katie did not breathe. She did not move. She tried to make herself smaller, quieter, more invisible than she had ever been in her life. Maybe the creature was sleeping. Maybe she could sneak back to the door without waking it. Then the Drek opened its eyes. All 6 of them focused directly on her. Katie felt something cold slide down her spine. This was how she was going to die. Alone in a forbidden garden, burned to ash by an alien dragon, 40 light years from home. The Drek stood up slowly. Its movements were smooth and silent. It began walking toward her. Katie's legs still would not work. She could only watch as death came closer, step by step. The Drek moved closer, and Katie could not run. Her body had forgotten how to move. All she could do was watch as the massive creature walked toward her with steps that made no sound on the soft garden ground. She had always thought that when she died, her life would flash before her eyes. That was what people said happened. But nothing flashed. There was only fear and the strange smell coming from the Drek. It smelled like the air after lightning strikes, mixed with something sweet like cinnamon. The creature stopped right in front of her. It lowered its huge head until one of its main eyes was level with her face. Katie could see herself reflected in that dark eye. She looked small and scared and alone. The Drek studied her for what felt like hours. Katie could feel heat coming from its scales. She could hear it breathing, slow and deep. She waited for the fire. She waited for the pain. She waited for the end. Instead, the Drek nudged her dot. It was a gentle push, like a dog asking for attention. The creature's snout pressed against her shoulder softly, almost carefully. Katie did not know what to do. This was not what the stories had described. This was not the monster that burned 14 servants to death. This was something else entirely. The Drek nudged her again. When she still did not respond, it did something even stranger. It nipped her. Not a bite. Not an attack. Just a quick light pinch on her forearm. The kind of thing a puppy might do when it wanted to play. It did not break her skin. It did not even hurt. Katie laughed. She did not mean to laugh. It just came out of her. All the fear and panic and confusion burst out of her throat as laughter. The sound echoed through the quiet garden, bouncing off the glowing plants and silver trees. The Drek tilted its head to the side. It looked curious. It looked almost confused, like it had not expected this reaction from the tiny human in front of it. "You're not going to eat me," Katie said, her voice shaking. "Are you? You just wanted to say hello." The Drek made a sound. It was a low rumble that Katie felt in her chest more than heard with her ears. It was not a growl. It was closer to a purr. The creature seemed pleased that she had finally responded. Katie reached out slowly, carefully. Her hand was trembling. Part of her brain was screaming that this was stupid, that she was going to lose that hand, that no human should ever touch a Drek. But another part of her knew that something important was happening. Something that went beyond fear and rules in common. Sensed out her fingers touched the Drek's snout. The scales were warm and smooth, not rough like she had expected. The creature closed its eyes and leaned into her touch, just like a cat being petted. The purring sound grew louder. "You're beautiful," Katie whispered. "You're not a monster at all." Then a voice cut through the moment like a knife. What in the three hells is happening here? Katie spun around so fast she almost fell over. Standing in the garden entrance was a Valkyrie, male dressed in robes that probably cost more than Katie would earn in 10 lifetimes. His silver skin seemed to glow with anger. His 4 eyes were wide with shock and fury. Behind him stood palace guards with weapons raised and pointed. Directly at Katie. She knew immediately who this was. Prince Kelvern, the owner of the Drek, the most powerful young noble in the entire empire. "Your Highness," Katie said, dropping to her knees as protocol demanded. "The evacuation. The gas leak. I didn't mean to come here. I was pushed through a door. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Silence," the prince said. His voice was cold enough to freeze fire. He walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall sounded like a judge's hammer. "You entered my private quarters. You approached Ashara. You touched her. Do you have any idea what you have done?" Katie kept her eyes on the ground. She could feel tears building behind her eyes. This was it. Not death by Drek, but execution for trespassing. Either way, she was never going home. Then the prince stopped speaking. Katie risked a glance upward and saw something she did not expect. The prince was not looking at her anymore. He was staring at the Drek with an expression of complete disbelief. Ashara had moved. The massive creature had positioned herself between Katie and the prince. Her 6 eyes were fixed on Kelvern, and her body language had changed completely. Her scales were rippling with inner light. Her purr had become a low, warning growl. The Drek was protecting Katie, protecting her from her own master. The prince spoke a word in ancient Valkyrie that Katie's translator could not process. It sounded like a command. Ashara did not move. He spoke again, louder this time. The Drek ignored him completely. "Impossible," the prince breathed. He looked from his Drek to the human servant kneeling on the ground and back again. This is impossible. The guards behind him shifted nervously. One of them asked if they should shoot the human. The prince held up a hand to stop them without looking away from Ashara. "No one touches her," he said quietly. "Not until I understand what has happened here." Katie did not understand what was happening either. But she understood one thing clearly. The Drek had chosen to protect her. A monster from legend, a creature that everyone feared, had looked at a small human maid and decided she was worth defending, whatever that meant. Katie knew her life had just changed forever. The prince finally looked at her. His 4 eyes studied her face like he was seeing a human for the first time in his life. "What is your name?" he asked. "Katie," she said. "Katie Monroe." "Katie Monroe," the prince repeated slowly. "Do you know what a Drek bond is?" Katie shook her head. The prince let out a long breath. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer angry. It was tired and confused, and something else that might have been wonder. "Then we have much to discuss. Guards, take her to the guest quarters." "Not the dungeons. The guest quarters. And someone please explain to the emperor why his celebration is about to be ruined." He looked at Ashara one more time. The Drek had not moved from her protective position. Her eyes were still fixed on the prince, with a warning that was clear in any language. 3 years, Kelvin said softly, speaking more to himself than anyone else. 3 years I have tried to bond with her. She rejected me. She rejected every Valkyrie who approached her. And now she chooses a human servant? He shook his head. The gods must be laughing at us all. Levi. He turned and walked away. The guards moved forward carefully, keeping their distance from Ashara. When they reached Katie, they did not grab her or push her. They simply gestured for her to follow them. As Katie stood up, Ashara made a sound. It was soft and concerned, like a mother watching her child leave for the first time. "I'll be okay," Katie said, not knowing if the Drek could understand her. "Thank you for protecting me." Ashara's 6 eyes blinked slowly. Then the Drek turned and walked back to her spot by the pool, lying down as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Katie followed the guards out of the garden. Her mind was spinning with questions she did not know how to ask. What was a Drek bond? Why had Ashara chosen her? What did this mean for her future? And most importantly, how was a human maid supposed to survive whatever came next? The guest quarters were nicer than anywhere Katie had ever stayed in her entire life. The bed was soft and huge. The walls were decorated with art that probably belonged in museums. There was food waiting for her on a golden tray, and it was not the leftover scraps that servants usually ate. But Katie could not enjoy any of it. She was too scared and confused. Guards stood outside her door. They were not treating her like a criminal, but they were also not letting her leave. She had no idea what time it was or what was happening in the rest of the palace. All she could do was wait. Medical officers came first. They were Valkyrie doctors who scanned her body with strange machines and took samples of her blood and hair. They asked her questions in rapid Valkyrie that her translator struggled to keep up with. "How long did you touch the Drek? Did you feel anything unusual? Have you experienced any strange thoughts or feelings?" Katie answered as best she could. She had touched Ashara for maybe 30 seconds. She had felt warmth and peace and something like connection. She did not know if that counted as unusual. The doctors left without explaining anything. Then came the officials. They were dressed in fancy robes and carried data tablets. They asked the same questions the doctors had asked, plus many more. What was her family history? Had any of her ancestors had contact with alien species before Earth joined the galactic community? Did she have any psychic abilities? Katie almost laughed at that last question. She was a maid from a small town in Ohio. Her only ability was scrubbing floors without complaining. The officials left looking disappointed. Through all of this, Katie could hear a Shara somewhere nearby. The Drek would make sounds every time someone kept Katie separated for too long. Low rumbles and soft cries that made the palace walls vibrate. Whatever bond had formed between them, it was clearly affecting the creature too. Finally, after what felt like days, but was probably only hours, Prince Calvern came to see her. He looked terrible. His silver skin had gone gray with exhaustion. Two of his 4 eyes kept closing like he was fighting to stay awake. The anger from the garden was completely gone, replaced by something that looked like defeat. "Leave us," he said to the guards. They hesitated. One of them pointed out that the human might be dangerous. "She weighs about 100 pounds and has no weapons," the prince said flatly. "I think I will survive. Now leave." The guards left. The door closed. Katie and the prince were alone. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the prince sat down in a chair across from her and let out a breath that seemed to empty his entire body. "I do not even know where to begin," he said. "That makes 2 of us," Katie replied. Something that might have been a smile crossed his alien face. "You are bold for a servant." "I was bold for a servant. I don't know what I am now." The prince nodded slowly. "That is exactly the problem. What you are now is something that has not existed for 400 years. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Tell me, Katie Monroe, what do you know about Dreks?" Katie told him what she had heard from the other servants. The rumors about fire and death. The stories about 14 killed workers. The whispers that Ashara was a monster waiting to break free. The prince listened without interrupting. When she finished, he shook his head. "Most of that is nonsense," he said. "Ashara has never killed anyone. She has never breathed fire at any living creature. The stories your fellow servants tell are just stories, made bigger by fear and ignorance." "Then why is everyone so scared of her?" "Because of what she represents. Because of what a Drek bond means." The prince paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. Dreks were partners to Velkhari nobles for thousands of years. Not pets, not servants, partners, equals. The bond between a Drek and their chosen person was considered the most sacred relationship in our culture. Katie frowned. "Their chosen person? You make it sound like the Drek picks who they want to bond with. Because they do. That is exactly how it works. A Drek cannot be forced to bond with anyone. They choose their partner. And once they choose, that bond cannot be broken except by death." Katie felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And Ashara chose me. Yes." The prince's voice was heavy with emotion. "For 3 years, I have been trying to bond with Ashara. I found her on a dying world at the edge of the galaxy. I brought her here. I cared for her. I hoped." He stopped and shook his head. "It does not matter what I hoped. She rejected me. She rejected every Velkhari noble who approached her. Every warrior, every priest, every member of the imperial family. And then a human servant stumbles into her garden by accident, and within 5 minutes, she has chosen you." Katie did not know what to say. "I'm sorry." The prince looked at her sharply. "Do not apologize. This is not your fault. Ashara chose you because she saw something in you that she did not see in any of us. I do not understand it, but I accept it." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the palace grounds. "The problem is that no one else will accept it so easily." He explained what the bond meant in practical terms. A Drek's chosen person was automatically elevated to nobility. Not minor nobility, major nobility. The kind that came with lands and power and influence. The kind that put Katie on the same level as princes and emperors. The last Drek-bonded person had lived 4 centuries ago. She had changed the empire forever. She had written laws that were still followed today. She had started wars and ended them. She had been one of the most powerful people in galactic history, and she had been assassinated 7 times. 7 times? Katie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 7 times, the prince confirmed. She survived all of them because Ashar protected her. But the attempts never stopped. There were always people who could not accept her power. People who wanted her dead. And you think people will want me dead too? The prince turned to face her. His 4 eyes were serious and sad. You are human. Your species has only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. Most of the Empire considers humans to be barely above animals. The idea that a human could be elevated to high nobility, that a human could hold power over them, will drive some people to madness. Katie felt the fear rising in her chest again. But alongside the fear, she felt something else. Something hotter and stronger. Anger. She was angry at the Volcari for looking down on humans. Angry at the servants who spread scary stories about monsters. Angry at the whole galaxy for treating her species like dirt. What if I refuse the bond? She asked. The prince shook his head. You cannot refuse. The bond is already formed. It cannot be undone. Then what are my choices? You can accept your new position and all the danger that comes with it. You can learn to navigate the politics of the Empire. You can try to survive. The prince paused. Or you can let the fear win. You can hide in these quarters until someone finds a way to kill you. That might take weeks. It might take months. But it will happen eventually. Katie stood up. Her legs were shaking, but she made them hold her weight. She walked to the window and stood beside the prince, looking out at the same view he was watching. Somewhere out there, Ashara was waiting for her. A creature from legend had looked at Katie Monroe from Ohio and decided she was worth choosing. Worth protecting. Worth bonding with forever. Katie did not understand why. She did not know what Ashara had seen in her, but she was going to find out. Tell me what I need to do, she said. Tell me how to survive. The prince looked at her with something new in his eyes. It might have been respect. First, he said, you need to meet the Emperor, and you need to make him believe that you are worth keeping alive. Katie swallowed hard. And how do I do that? I have absolutely no idea. But we have 3 days to figure it out. 3 days. 3 days to learn how to survive in a world that wanted her dead. 3 days to become something more than a human made from a backwater planet. Katie took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Then we better get started,